Okay, so I decided to be patient and wait for the next 4 shields to come out altogether as opposed to making individual videos over each one of them, since that would be both boring and uncreative like clickbaiters on YouTube. And the funny thing about that is that it would actually prove to be much better for me since I can actually gain more footage as well as try to be a bit more informative than I was in the previous episode, which is in the description below for those who have yet to see it. I know it's going to happen eventually, but you never know. But with that out of the way, the 4 shields we'll be going over this time will largely cover the DLC portion that was introduced some time ago, and that actually means if you want to obtain the goodies this time around, then you're going to have to acquire the content that's been out for more than a year, excluding Resistance of course. So, as the old saying goes, let's get this bread. The Sacred Shield requires you or your team to tackle the dangerous depths of New York, which is better known as the Underground. Being the first DLC expansion of the game, you'll be tasked with helping the JTF maintain control of the tunnels and labyrinths from different enemy organizations that you've already encountered from the main storyline. In other words, you'll basically be carrying the JTF in your seemingly large backpack while completing the different tasks that will be given to you, otherwise known as phase operations. Aside from the fact that this will be an even bigger grindfest than the main storyline altogether, your objectives are relatively simple for the most part. Your task for this shield is to reach rank level 10, complete 10 phase operations, and kill 10 living, breathing monstrosities that plague the gaming world, which we like to call hunters. The first 2 parts don't require that much of an explanation if we're being completely honest with each other. For each phase operation you go into, you'll be given an objective that requires you to go against a specific enemy faction. This usually consists of destroying their supply stocks, restoring power in certain areas of the map, retrieving information from JTF personnel, or killing the elite NPC bosses towards the end. If you wish to gain additional XP, be sure to collect the intel that shows up in each phase operation. Not only will you get a nifty little reward from it, but it also covers a bit of the lore that's been going on in the underground session. But I assume that's not why most of us are here now, are we? I would go into depth about the modifiers, but since you're already starting at a low level, then there's really no need for it. Unless you happen to have a friend who knows their shit when it comes to the underground, then just continue what you normally do. Hunters, on the other hand, are going to be a bit more difficult to handle depending on the situation. Originally being introduced in the Survival DLC expansion, hunters are much more lethal and toxic than the existing NPC factions. By this I mean they are more ruthless in terms of combat. Not only are they more durable than a brick wall, but they also utilize the same equipment that Division agents use on a regular basis. It's like all the NPCs in the game manage to fuse together, and that's the end product. During any phase operation you're a part of, they'll suddenly pop up like daisies after a brief halt in your normal routine. From this, your screen will be disrupted, followed by smoke bombs covering a pathway, and once it starts happening, you may want to run before the bullets start flying since they hit like an 18-wheeler truck. If they manage to catch you, just know that they will one-shot you with their melee attack and proceed to execute your corpse in a cool yet horrifying manner. And despite what they can do, they're not necessarily menacing as most people would describe them as. They can be countered as long as you have the right equipment and weapons on hand. The easiest approach to them from my perspective is to hide back in a secure location and let them come to you. From there you can start picking them apart one by one. Set up a few traps that you know that they will come across. Wait for them to come like the dumbasses that they were programmed to be, and proceed to cheese the ever-loving shit out of them. Preferred abilities for this case would be the flashbang sticky bomb and the flamethrower turret to keep them at bay. After eliminating them, go ahead and claim your reward from the corpse and be on your way. They usually drop classified and exotic gear, so be sure not to die, as if you do, they will not appear until the next phase operation, so just be wary. Before we leave off, one more thing to address. The number of hunters will increase depending on how many people you have in your party. Since you already have to go against 2 hunters by yourself, each additional person will spawn 1 more hunter in the process. For example, 2 members equal 3 hunters, 3 members equal 4. If you're in a full group, then 5 hunters will spawn and each will be just as deadly as the last. This also means that you're at a higher risk of dying if you or your party cannot protect themselves properly. So just be careful when roaming around in the underground, because you never know what you're going to get. The Phoenix Shield will have you traversing in a harsh winter in Manhattan in order to retrieve antivirals from the Dark Zone. This is what we would call the Survival DLC expansion. Here you'll be racing against time as you have to venture through a dark Manhattan, scavenging for anything that will be useful as you'll be facing many dangers along the way. With only a limited amount of resources at hand, you'll be at a disadvantage unless you trek through familiar landscapes and hope that someone or something won't eliminate you in the process. Your task is to extract 5 items from the Dark Zone, survive for 5 hours, and kill 5 hunters in the process. For this whole sequence in particular, the first step you need to do is craft some clothing and start looking for shit. Your main objective is to craft a virus filter so that you can get inside the Dark Zone, but for now, we're going to ignore that. The main reason why is due to the fact that at this moment, you only have a pistol and some meds that will barely keep you alive for maybe 10 minutes at the most. Your utmost priority is to go to different areas or locations and find any loot that will prove to be useful in the long run. By exploring, you'll come across different items such as edibles, crafting material, gear, and clothing items to protect yourself against the cold. Just note that you will be going on for miles as you're exploring. It'll literally be the longest walk that you've had in your entire gaming career. Now, while the exploration sequence may be simple, go ahead and tackle on the surviving aspect and you'll see that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. Since this game mode is considered a battle royale, I guess you could say, you're bound to run into other players along the way, so don't be surprised when they loot your favorite spot in the game. Whether you're playing on either PvE or PvP, the goal remains the same altogether. The only difference is that other players can be quite the assholes and can bust a cap in your ass so they can loot your dead corpse, so once again, don't be surprised. If you'd like, you can always try to avoid contact with other players and let them deal with the heavy shit, then proceed to shoot them in the back like the little devils that I know we all are, and take every resource that we can get. It's called survival of the fittest for a reason, and it works every single time.
They were talking about their strengths, and one of them just goes, well, really, I feel like it'd be better for the other girl, I forget who it was. Like, I feel like it'd be better for her to be the main part. And then it just cuts to her the confession. She's like, fuck my drag, right?
And while we're on the topic of making enemies, there are 5 factors altogether that can kill you as you're skulking around the streets. This list includes enemy NPC factors that you're already aware of, other players of course, the virus infection that you have at the beginning of the session, the freezing cold, and last but not least, yourself. The reason why I say yourself is due to the fact that most people manage to neglect at least 2 of these factors and end up screwing themselves in the process. So, be sure to stock up on fabric and medical supplies, since one can be crafted to protect you from the cold, while the other can be used to protect you from the infection. Be wary that the more medical supplies you consume along the way, the more of a resistance that the infection will be able to reduce, so it's best to save them and use them wisely. As the old saying goes, never get high on your own supply. I think. Now that you've got the exploration down to a T, the only 2 parts left is to extract 5 items from the Dark Zone as well as kill any hunter that stands in your way. When entering the Dark Zone, the first thing that you need to do is locate the antiviral case. Afterwards, you'll need to craft a flare gun at any safe house that will be utilized for calling in an evac chopper. But before you do this, it's best to explore around a bit and find some more materials as it will help later on. This will also give you incentive to find different caches around the area that can be extracted as well. With all this out of the way, the only thing that's left is to call in the chopper and take out the hunter that'll be waiting for you there. If you played in the DZ before, then you already know that the flare gun is used to call in the helicopter. Once this happens, get ready to run like Forrest Gump, as the hunter will also be on his way to gut you alive. Just like the Sacred Shield, it's best to find a secure location and take out the hunter from there. It won't be simple, however, as they will come after you rigorously. For this scenario, I would recommend using LMGs and shotguns to keep them at bay, while also using a marksman rifle to get accurate shots on their head for maximum damage. Just know that when you take huge chunks of health away from them, they will heal themselves up with the med kits they have on themselves, so it will be an annoying little process, but they will eventually run out from what I've seen. A nice little tactic that my friend Pre taught me is that by going to the Dark Zone 2 evac area, once you call in the chopper, just go ahead and get on top of the scaffolding that's right behind you. That way the hunters will not be able to reach you up there and you'll be able to get a nice clear view of them. They will damage you since you have no cover up there, so it's best to try to hit them from afar. This process will be time consuming, but after you manage to kill the hunter, take whatever they dropped, get in the chopper, and proceed to leave. Repeat this process until the shield's practically yours. The Rebel Shield will give you the task of going up against all enemy factions within the Resistance DLC expansion. For this one in particular, you'll be setting your sights on the West Side Pier, a new area that the Division and JTF are trying to maintain control of while fighting off the different organizations that still pose a threat to Manhattan on this day. So instead of them beating the shit out of each other, they basically decided to call a truce and work together to beat the shit out of you and your teammates. I'm pretty sure this isn't what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. died for, but I'm just going to go ahead and turn the other cheek and tiptoe around this. During this time, the shield requires you to reach wave 15 of resistance, and basically resistance is just you going against waves and waves of enemies until you either leave the session or die. In this case, you only have to reach wave of 15. You don't necessarily have to complete it unless you want the cash reward that it offers you in the end, but be warned that named hunters will be in that round, so it's basically your choice. There are 3 maps total in resistance: Carrier, Pier 93, and Powerhouse. I'm pretty sure some channels have guides on how to survive the resistance game mode with cheese tactics that you and your buddies can use to your advantage, but there is a simpler solution. On Twitter, during the announcement of this shield in particular, a couple of people were stating that you can do the shield solo on different tiers. I tried this out, and much to my belief, it actually worked. Assuming you've been beefing yourself up in World Tier 5 and have been optimizing your equipment every chance you got, go ahead and switch to World Tier 1. Start up the resistance session and you're basically good to go. At this point, you're a walking bullet sponge, and with your gear, not only will you be able to kill enemies with complete ease, but you also won't be taking as much damage as you're already used to. This is, without a doubt, the very definition of working smarter and not harder. Sooner or later, you'll end up eventually getting a shield, and yeah, that's all she wrote.
Next wave in 20 seconds.
Lastly, we have the Talon Shield. The reason why I decided to save this one for last is due to the fact that it's probably the most strenuous of the current shields that are already out. The goal for this one is to, and I shit you not, gain accommodation score of 3000. This is going to be a bit tough for me to explain, so bear with me for just a moment. Commendations were released some time ago that keeps track of our progress that we've made in the Division. This ranges from the missions we've completed to side objectives that we're also able to get through. Commendation is really just another word for achievements that we can acquire after completing certain tasks. Altogether, you can gain up to a total score of 5,365 points with over 300 commendations to complete. This, however, does not include the global event commendations, as they give you no points towards it. Most of them are fairly simple. For example, if you're new to the game, you can complete the main storyline missions to quickly gain some points. Along the way, you can also track down the collectibles that the game has to offer. It may not be enough, but it's a start. The other commendations would include killing a certain number of enemy NPCs, grenade kills, emote spams, closing car doors, completing challenging missions, incursion side objectives, and the main mission of incursions, and along with that, DLC options as well. I can't necessarily go that much into depth when it comes to the commendations, since I barely made the 3000 mark myself. Not only are there at least over 300 at this point, but it will definitely take you a while to cover the bare minimum, and it will prove to be quite strenuous along the way. It's not impossible to obtain, but it will be tough, and that's unfortunately the T. The only advice I can offer to you at this point is to either group up with a friend who's also starting out in the Division just like you are and obtain them from there. Or if you're doing a solo approach, Reddit is your best friend. The eggheads over there on Reddit have many guides in regards to how you can complete the commendations, so once again, it will take you some time to complete, so you had best be prepared. Go ahead and give them a look and see what you can find. But other than that, that's about it for this guideline. Until the next and last episode, hope you guys enjoy. Love you all, and peace.